Okay, that should be me live. There we go. Hi, George. Hi, Asa. How you doing? We're getting the stream early today. Um, yeah, George. I believe it's the .NET tooling that actually holds onto the bin and object folders. I had an issue the other week where actually I broke the NuGet packages after I deleted them. Um, there's, there's scripts out there, there's tools out there to clean the bin and object folders. Yeah, what was it? Was it a migration that was holding on and not taking the right changes? I think I was in your stream for a little while, but I was doing other things as well, so unfortunately I wasn't able to catch your problems. Things are good, Essa. Things are good. I'm enjoying my software development right now. However, registering stuff in the container is way better in Java Spring. I'd have to see it to know. First migration that wouldn't happen. Huh. I'm about to start looking at migrations in the near future, so yeah. Morning, Dota. How you doing? Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't actually looked at Java in a long time. Um, yeah, and then when things like Xamarin Tools came along, or rather, before that, Mono Developer, etc. Um, it was just simply um, easier to do mobile development with .NET than it was to do anywhere near Java and iOS alternatives. Morning, Mr. Anhorn. How are you doing? So if I want to class in my container, just annotate it at component. Oh, so if you okay, so huh. He says struggling to find something that so you just do like at component on that, and now that's in your DI container. I'm gonna have to go again. Just popped in to say hi. I'm at the mall and Mrs. in the knick-knack store. Well, thank you for stopping in, George. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Spring AOP, DI, and AIC support a good framework. Huh. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Interesting. Huh. Huh. I will maybe one day I'll fit Java in there just to learn. Because I think it is useful to see other languages and use other tools because you get to see how people solve problems in different ways. I'm not a Spring guy, but I respect those who use it. Okay. Because different frameworks, different libraries give different constraints, and people get around them in different ways. So it's always interesting to see. It's kind of like when I was learning MVC. I didn't start with .NET, right? Because I was looking at MVC early MVC in .NET. Um, I went to Ruby or Ruby on Rails, um, and PHP frameworks to try and understand the underpinnings because I was frustrated with magic. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of significant amounts of magic unless I understand the magic, right? So if I'm writing the magic, I'm fine with it. But if it's someone else's, I have to understand it sometimes. Oh, this little fly. Okay, so talking about magic, what happens today? So yesterday we moved over to using fast endpoints. That's done. I merged it. He says, leaving folders lying around. So now this is using fast endpoints. I did test it. I could create a tenant. I could register. I could get tickets, etc. So this is generally working. So remove missing folder from project. Push. So today I want to start with kind of some rules discussions because it really got me thinking. So the other day we were talking with Grumpy and he was like, oh, is there a rule there? Is there a rule there, etc. And then I started thinking about what am I actually going to do in terms of rules? Because if I want to make these transparent and visible, right? What does that look like? Right. So I had the status pending, right? So when a ticket is added, it's injected, it's put in with the status pending, and you can't go back to pending. Is the rule that I kind of suggested. But how would I enforce that? Right? How do I document that? Right? Do I need to? Do I do it in validation? Right? Do I do update support ticket? Right? So in here, I just say, okay, it is whatever I tell it to be, which is fine because if I'm thinking about it, the the front end is being controlled, and I can never go back to a state of 0 because the front end only offers 1, 2, and 3. But I can switch between these. Closed, in progress, open, and in Jira you do that. You know, you might move it to close, but then someone's actually like, oh no, that's actually wrong. We need to fix this. Put it back to in progress, etc. Which in the term in the spirit of visibility and communication, I think that's actually not a good thing to do. I think it's if there was something wrong and you marked it as closed, something else should happen, but it should not come out of closed because you've marked it as closed. But I think that would be too restrictive. I think that would be an event, right, that fires off, hey, this happened. So what I want to kind of go over is kind of just before I start to get into the depths of the actual code and start to write more and more features, I want to make sure that I understand what it looks like to do rules or to apply rules, right? So right now I have a validation, right, and a review date. The more I'm looking at these things, I'm thinking, holy crap, I do actually have a lot of events that need to come out of this system if I want to provide notifications. Yeah, business rules. Without using that 3-letter acronym, right? But I'm starting to go into that realm of, I do have some stuff and I'm going to okay. So right now I have on the tickets, when I'm adding a ticket, right, I have to have a customer name, I have to have a description, I have to have a review date, and it has to be in the future, right? It has to be greater than this moment right this second. When I update it, that rule is actually lost, right? So I can update a ticket to be in the past, right? Nothing is applying that rule. This is applied, by the way. It's not used in here. It's applied by this. So I actually apply the rule here. So it's validated before it even gets into the actual command or the handler. Which is why initially I placed validators there. And even that, I might even consider the validation being part of this, right? The validator being in this class, right? Because that would be then this would live in here, and this would be validator, and that would be that, and that would be that, that. Then this program would change to be add support ticket dot validator, right? That way the validation is part of the overall process of adding a support ticket. But is that enough? Is a validator that I apply before I even get into my handle enough? So in the update support ticket scenario, well, obviously I have to have a ticket. That's a clear one, right? So what could break here, right? I could change the review date. So review date not validated, right? So I shouldn't be able to select a review date that's prior to the current date still, right? Right now, with my review dates are kind of a value that will always be set, should never be null. But in the interest of malicious compliance, right, you could end up with someone saying, "Oh, the review date's in 2027," right? Just to make sure that it's far enough out there that it's never going to get hit, right? Or if that backlog item lives for long enough, then it's going to be sat right at the bottom for a very long time. So, I think a business rule would be, you can set a maximum review window. Basically, the coding handle is going to get ever increasing and maybe relate to other handle methods, but not realize it. But yeah, I mean, that's the overall problem. Right? That's a problem no matter what I do, right? No matter how I design the software, this is an issue, right? But it starts to get into the realm of ticket is the thing that validates it, right? And I'm trying to avoid the acronym, but it kind of is, right? And I don't know how to design that properly based upon my current structure, right? Why is that breaking? I guess it's got validated stuff. Hexagonal's big idea is to put the code into a core and reuse it. Give me that. I'm sick of seeing that. If cores becomes an issue, I can add it back in. It's not like I forget how to use it. Right. Well, I've got to find what. So the problem is, ticket understands it, right? A ticket is the item that I'm working with. A ticket understands that it can't be assigned a review date in the past. A ticket understands that it can't be moved back to pending. And some of these rules are going to be very light right this second, right? In the future, though, if I had a review date window, then that kind of blends the two pieces, right? I'd also think you'd want to name the folders by command. Well, the folder naming is again the structure We did the refactoring to put the top level piece. I don't necessarily agree with making add support ticket its own folder and then put in, because some people would do add support ticket, then they'd have add support ticket.validator and add support ticket.command, etc. as folders and as items under there. I'm just putting them all in one class because it is add support ticket. But this is kind of shared validation. This is not validation on necessarily just add, right? These rules still matter on an update. I think that's less clear than the shared business rules. Okay. So traditionally, I would solve this by making sure those rules were applied, right? I'd make sure the validator here also has those rules. And it could be a copy and paste. It might not be a copy and paste, right? But I want to make sure that I'm thinking about this in a solid way. I can easily defer it until it's more of a problem. Well, I mean, right now is a good time to tackle some of this. Because I do have some rules starting to creep in, even if they are minor. And I don't mind experimenting because the code base isn't massive. If I write dozens of classes and then have to go back and change them all, that gets a little bit more off-putting and a little harder to just experiment with, right? So that's why I'm kind of considering this now before I go too far. I don't have to have a perfect solution. I just have to have a solution that works for me. Again, it's more about, so we kind of went through this the other day, and I think Asa brought it up in terms of maybe these are the folders because these are the use cases, right? But again, what's my repository look like? As in the data layer? That's it. There's no implementation for that. It's a generic implementation. Each class has its own responsibility. Having class in the same file does not change the situation. Yeah, that's just an organizational piece, right? This is a generic implementation by specifications. It's narrowed to the DB context via a single repository for the group, and that's it. Everything is of that. So all iRepository of T is a work items repository, so it gets this context and everything works within the context. So the specifications work. I like that design. It means I don't have to talk about repositories too much and I don't have to implement my own stuff. Application business rules in application layer, domain business rules in domain layer. Right. But again, as I'm not trying to jump into DDD, then domain and application are essentially the same thing for right this second. Unless all of a sudden I go off and DDD strikes me and that moment clicks and all of a sudden I become really au fait in implementing DDD. Yeah. Yeah, domain is a common bit. I understand, what domain represents. I'm just not trying to pretend that this stream is going to be anything about DDD. Applications are unique to this service stuff. Give me an example of that, if you can. Well, I know you can, but in the bounds of a text in Twitch, I mean, the main different applications you need to move your rules to the domain. Yeah, true. This is an application-specific implementation of these things, but ticket may exist in different applications. Yeah, basically, if it's service code, it wouldn't get moved. If it's domain, it would. That's kind of what I'm going to. Is like the ticket is kind of the one that owns the rule, right? So that is a domain rule. If we're creeping into that world, right? Um, Review date cannot be in the past is a domain rule. It's not a rule of the application layer. Right. Right. I mean, the application layer would generally get the aggregate, apply the change that it needs to apply. The aggregate would have the rules to contain, hey, I can't do that, etc. And it would also publish its events. I get the general gist of how to write the code. I just don't want to. Yeah. Because then ticket would have an update method. I forgot to run ads at the beginning. My apologies. Although you two are you two are subs, you don't need to worry about the ads, do you? Because again, if I'm gonna, I don't want to creep into DDD because I don't have enough experience building those things to put them on the application, and I could make a bigger mess by doing that. And I appreciate that I've got two people in the chat in the stream um, that know a little bit more about that stuff, but it's not the time to be, hey, handhold me through some basic things that I may or may not implement correctly. Yeah, I'm of a similar opinion. It's very early to pull out the 10 lines of code here that is domain. Yeah, but I think that it's starting to creep into that area where that behavior, right? So in terms of rules, right, and I suppose this goes fully into breaking the rules, right? This goes in here. A benefit of doing it this way, by the way, is that I'm keeping this together, right? Um, I don't have to have different files. I don't have to increase the number of files or the things I have to read through and understand what is appropriate to what I need. If I'm talking about updating a support ticket, everything is contained within this file. Yes, it's under a class, but that's just because then we can name them handler, command, and validator, right? We don't have to name them update support ticket validator, update support ticket command, update support ticket handler. So it does give us some structure that is neat. And when it comes time to pull this apart, this is not going to be a bit difficult, right? Now these pieces can be pulled from the specific thing. So anyway, so to apply that rule right this second, we do this. Update support ticket command. Update support ticket validator. There we go. Okay, so now our update support ticket has the same behavior. That logic around the status of a ticket is changing the ticket status. Yeah, I mean it shifts the ticket status. But right now, again, there's no rule to say you can't. The only rule that exists, which couldn't be broken, would be the ticket cannot go back to pending. But that can't be broken because there's no way for the UI to tell it, the API layer, sorry, to tell it to go back to that status. That logic around the status of a ticket is changing the ticket status, right? it would be valid out the DB. Yeah, yeah. So, yes, yeah. Again, I think we've the way that I would like to have identified, um, yeah. But I think we're into that realm of kind of identifying the objects, right? Which applies that. Yeah. Essentially, it. I mean, right now there's no. Um, yeah. Yeah. If I do it, yeah, as an action of ticket, update the change the ticket status, then it would, yeah. Hmm. Brings up a question. Should the other stuff have command methods? I'm not sure I'm ready to go down this path. Uh huh. Well, so customer name and description don't really have knock-on effects. Review date has knock-on effects, right? Because so in terms of events that I'd want to know about, right? If a review date shifts, so again, in the interest of visibility, the purpose of this system will be to tell people about certain things happening, right? So if the user is assigned, right? If the review date changes, if the status changes, people should be told that it changed, right? So there are events that should be fired on these things in the long term. Right now, I'm not worrying about that notification piece. I'm worrying more about the actual getting the data in there. But yeah, you are right. There are things that need to happen here and publish events based upon them happening. Is it update tickets and property bag stuff? And the stuff is from 34 to 47, essentially. Well, again, there'd be an event here. There'd be an event here. There'd be an event there, right? Because again, if this ticket has been, tickets don't have. The reason I'm not worried about this too much right this second is because tickets don't have as much notification requirement as when they will get promoted to become stories, etc. Um, but it is still, if anybody's attached to the ticket, if anybody's watching the ticket, um, then they should be told the status has changed. They should be told the review date has been shifted. They should be told that someone else has been assigned to it. Right. So the goal there is very much to be able to alert out. So there will be events that get fired based upon at least these three changing. These two, not so much, right? So that is essentially update details, right? This is implicit. Every time a change happens, the last update gets triggered. But the update ticket, fiat property value, an update ticket knows it. It needs to fire an event or not. Yeah, Is that a layer of engineering? So that's kind of meeting in the middle, right? That's not quite moving into the using the word aggregate around this, but it is moving to a more a change system that does apply. Hey, these things change. Do you care about them? So on that topic, actually, events, Kafka, there's shared code on something that event. Yeah, is the reason I thought generics would suit. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just how and where. I'm not creating classes for the sake of creating classes here, but events. I saw an interesting pattern the other day. I can't remember where I saw it. It was watching one of the videos, I believe, but it looked something like this. So you know how I've had issues determining whether Kafka events are truly events or whether they are shared object data, right? So the difference being if we have actually let's go with ticket because ticket is easy. Right, so we have an object called ticket, right? We'll go into sudo JSON / code this, right? So it has an ID one. It has a customer name, Bob. It has a description. Bob got issues. It has a review date, 2024 10/01. We'll get around on that one later. It has a status, and that is 1, say, right? So I have the question of, okay, well, when I publish events about this thing, what does that look like, right? And I've always been questioning, okay, well, do I then have, what does my topic look like, right? Do I have tickets as a topic? Do I have tickets? Do I have tickets.updated? Do I have tickets.review date changed? Really? It's a text file. Get out my way, right? What do my topics look like? So I've always kind of leaned towards, again, with Kafka, tickets would be my topic, and I'd publish this object. The systems that need to care about that object now can determine what it is they need to deal with, right? But is that an event? If it's just a data publishing, then, and that's how I've used Kafka in the past, then is it data publishing, right? It's not really events because yes, there's a reason for that change, but who cares about the reason for the change? But I saw an interesting pattern and it looked like this. So my topic would be tickets. Events, but in terms of state, not event sourcing. No, not event sourcing. I'm not doing event sourcing. I'm talking about if, publishing events to say things change in the system, right? And again, traditionally, I've used Kafka kind of how it was intended in terms of it was publishing the data, and the data could be inferred by the system consuming the data, right? Whereas if you actually think of it about an event, and that's why a lot of those articles that Esa linked to the other week, right? There's a distinction between, okay, this is event data, not event sourcing, etc. There's a difference in how. Right. So yeah, they have event-driven and event sourcing systems, right? So event sourcing would be, I want to build my aggregate based upon the actual events happening, right? So I'd have an event that is ticket status updated, right? And that event would be a ticket ID and a status, right? And I would construct my object off the events, right? Yeah. Event sourcing is where you can replay the events, right? But I'm not using Kafka in that term. I might get to event sourcing, right? Event sourcing and aggregates fit very tightly together, right? Because the events consumed can form the aggregate, right? Again, if we're changing the status, if we're setting the customer details, if we're setting the review date, etc., all these events come together, and their current state is the aggregate, right? So again, ticket is an aggregate. Then I think it's event sourcing where you can replay what happened, which is essentially the logging, but you wouldn't send logs outside that microservice. It's implementation details of the repository, right? So domain events, right, versus integration events, right? So again, I think that a lot of the stuff we look at, a lot of the stuff we saw, is event sourcing versus event-driven architecture stuff. They kind of blur the lines all the time, right? I'm really talking at this point. I'm talking about integration events, right? Not domain events, right? So, yeah, if ticket is an aggregate and update customer details, update customer, update description. I'm just being very, very granular here. Update review date, or set review date, or whatever. Set status, etc. These are events that happen. Then the ticket is the sum of these things happening to make this data state, right? So that's event sourcing. 22 Yeah. So, well, I'm not trying to achieve this. What I'm trying to do is just say, hey, there's a difference here, right? So, if so, there's a set of events that I need to publish within my work items area, right? Things that will trigger other things to happen, right? The greater system might care about this, but doesn't care about just that date, right? Because they're not tracking necessarily this object as a whole. They might never have seen this object before, right? So an integration event publishes, right, to a topic called tickets. Well, if I've got it called tickets, what do I do? Well, some people implement essentially a structure that is like event ticket.status.data or something like that, right? And then event data, and they basically use this as a message bus, right? So review date, right? So they use this as an actual message bus and publish that domain that internal event out beyond as an integration event. I've seen that, but what I saw was something I don't see the advantage. Well, that's why I'm always stuck on what an event is, right? Event is, and one of those videos that SS sent the other day was actually said it. Event is such an overloaded term, right? It is ridiculous how many times we use the word event and what do we care about, right? So in an integration event, like a tenant, let's go with tenant because I've got a tenant example, right? I care about the tenant created, but if the tenant's details change, I still care about that. But for the most part, all I care about is what is the current status of the tenant, right? The source event doesn't really matter to me if I'm delivered the entire tenant data. So if I have a topic called tenants and a message looks like this, um, whatever it is, description. So as an integration event, I'm always getting all the data. So that's where I go with Kafka, right? I deliver the object data, right? And then I leave it down to the actual individual systems to pick up that data and say, hey, what do I need to do with it? But if I need to know why it was triggered, I never have that because I'm not using it as a message bus. But something dawned on me the other day. So far, I've used Kafka in very much a single publisher, multiple consumer manner, right? The reality is other areas can publish that tenant potentially, other things that can change that tenant or ticket or whatever it is, right? So again, ticket might look like this, right? Where I publish all of that, right? And I just publish an event that triggered this thing, right? So status updated. Not every system needs to care about this potentially, but it helps if they want to know why they're being told about it, right? Because each event will publish its own version of this data. So as an integration event, this allows any system consuming it to take all the data, right? How do you avoid cycles? Cycles. More context. I'm not sure. The ticket produces a tenant event that produces a ticket event. So that wouldn't happen because the individual. So okay, so let's get back. A ticket and tenant is two different components of the system overall. The reason I went with tenant is because I actually have an example of tenant, right? I need to know tenant created. Ticket created might be a thing, right? But from an integration perspective, who cares about tickets, right? Most of the events for tickets happen within inside the ticket system, right? And I think this is going to get renamed to tickets, right? It's going to be focused solely on the support ticket aspect of the application. Tenant doesn't publish an event as a result of consuming an event. Not in this instance, no. So in this case, the flow is tenant management. You create a new tenant, right? We publish that so that we can establish the data in the ticket system for that tenant, right? There's no further knock-on effect, right? So consumers, tenant created and tenant user created, right? All that would change in doing it this way I'm doing it, right? This would be a tenant receiver, and that would be a tenant user receiver. So individual consumers would be set up to receive the objects. The event data would still be in the event that triggered them would still be labeled in this way of doing it, right? So I'd know why it was there. So in this case, this one would change to be, okay, the event is tenant user updated, but do I have the tenant user? No, I don't. Okay, let's create them because I've got all the data I need for, yeah, tenant user is a different thing, right? This is just arbitrary naming. There's no actual structure to that, right? ID, period, name, Bob, tenant ID, tenant identifier, because it would be published with that, period, right? So the fact that it was updated could mean that I do something different in here, but in general, if I don't have that data, I now can create that data. Tenant doesn't publish an event as a result. No, tenant users are a different event within the tenant microservice. So again, tenant user is an object. Tenant is an object that is published that the system cares about because again, work items needs to know about users, right? So when a user is added to a tenant, we publish an event, right? Out of using Kafka. That's an integration event, right? An integration event being a piece of data can be integrated into other systems. What I'm saying is instead of having this granularity, I get rid of that specificity because it doesn't. That's an integrator, an integration concern, not a domain concern, right? That is a nice to have, well, it's a necessary to have, but it's extra data. But I don't if I get a tenant user updated and I've never seen that, my system can kind of self-repair, right? Because if I just update the user in the tenant management system, it will publish an event saying tenant user with the data attached to it, and it will give a reason for why. It'd say tenant user not updated. But this system doesn't care about that event. It just cares, hey, I haven't got that data. Let's integrate it. So in terms of changes, in terms of events and changes, right, that's very much integration events, right? And I'm now, it's not so much I'm understanding them. I've understood them for a long time. I'm just starting to put a design, like a solid design around how people use these things, right? Because I've for a long time just done this based upon what's felt right, and because no one really gives you clear explanation of as to how or why or whatever. I think it might have been Derek Cromartin that I actually watched a video on, and all of a sudden he said something. I was like, oh, that clicks. Someone showed an example, and the event looked like this. I'm like, huh. Because there is, so if you think about it from a logging perspective, right? So which is where Kafka came from. From a logging perspective, Kafka was very much this happened, here's the data, right? This happened, here's the data, right? And that might be the source system. I don't know how they designed it originally, but the intention was never, the intention was not for Kafka to be a message bus. It was for Kafka to be rapid delivery of data distributed across multiple systems that could be consumed, right? Because if you're looking at metrics and things, number of clicks, etc., Kafka's perfect for that because, right, if I click on something and publish clicked, the throughput on Kafka, the ordering of those events in Kafka is fine. So I could actually use Kafka to publish the events of someone clicking around on a screen and then replay that event later, right? But the individual event doesn't actually have a lot of context other than the fact that it was clicked, and here's the data for that click, right? Similar, the tenant, I don't need to publish to the greater system from an integration perspective. I don't need to publish the tenant name was updated. I don't need to publish the tenant description was updated, because in that respect, is Kafka queue or topic? Can it be both? I mean, Kafka topics are queued because you are guaranteed to get them out in the same order they came in. So you can the ordering is well within a single partition. So it comes down to your data design, right? So if you care about true ordering, yeah, pretty much. So it would be a queue, and you have to have a queue per service, right? Well, so the way Kafka works is you have a topic. A topic can be partitioned. A single partition, you are guaranteed ordering, so you are guaranteed a queue. So it comes down to how you scale your data out, because within a single queue, individual consumers can only consume one message at once. So your throughput is limited. If you want speed, what you do with Kafka is you partition it, and then you can put multiple consumers of a single group against the topic, and then it will process at the rate of your partitions. Where you get out of the Kafka complexity is scaling. Yeah, and configurable scaling. So if you design your system to, let's say in the click event that I just gave, right, which is not one I've experienced, so it's kind of silly to really go that path, but I'll commit. If I was firing off the events, clicked here, click there, click there, click there, click there, click there, click there, right? Then if each event had a time stamp on it, right, and I was just recording it, then it wouldn't matter. If I need to get massive throughput on that, right, I would be able to say, hey, there's 10 partitions here. And then when I started up my consumer group, I could start 10 consumer instances, and they would consume 10 messages each pass, right? So, but depending on where I partition my data, it could be randomly assigned to each partition, or I can still control based upon key, etc. There's all manner of configurability there, right? One of the reasons I always wonder if Terry needs Kafka. Do I need Kafka? No. But based upon the system I'm going to build, I still believe that Kafka is a solid piece, right? I still need to have inter-service communication, right? I still need those integrations. I could go with something simpler. I could go with a simple message bus. I could go with all manner of different things, right? But I do want the independent deployability. And Kafka might be a little bit of an overkill for what I've got right this second. Why can't it be solved with Azure Cube? Because I'm not using Azure. It could be. I think we should have built on top of Kafka at work, but the complexity and cost was a no-go from a CTO. Kafka was built for LinkedIn scale, yeah. Kafka does process very fast, right? The one benefit Kafka has and why people are trying to make message buses out of it is that message ordering, right? But again, that is all down to your design, and you have to design it that way. You cannot change it. So that's why I question its necessity, because it can be used on a smaller scale, right? I can grow into the use of it. So in the event bus world, right? From here, I publish tenant created, right? From the tenant application, right? If we go to tenants, notifications, well, subscribers, tenant users registered, right? I publish here. This goes out to Kafka right now, but this event, let's say I publish to an event bus, right? This service still needs that message, right? And that's why I'm saying that this confuses things by calling it by building these per event. Then my design at the Kafka scale, the Kafka level, is not right. We went with the topic-based system. Azure Event Bus, Event Grid is Azure's Kafka implementation, right? So the biggest problem with Kafka is you have to think about your design of how the data is going to flow before you build what you're going to do. You cannot change it easily after the fact without destroying things. I don't think the debate involves a code change beyond config. Right. Afternoon, Rambling Geek. How are you doing? Yeah. So, for me, yes, I could switch this out, and it's exactly why I do this, right? My event publisher to my application layer doesn't really matter. Queues are nice if you want to get rid of multiple async requests. Good after reworking some code for work, but I thought was working but wasn't. Been there. Familiar problem, at least. Yeah, so I can swap out what I use for publishing this event, but I don't think necessarily that this is. I think what this becomes. I keep running it now and checking such a time, so oh no, because now you don't trust it. Well, our new manager wondered who handled ops after observing us for months. Probably best compliment our group has gotten ever. Nice. VHH? VHH Kuji5. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Basically, why aren't there a bunch of fires constantly? Yeah. Sometimes it's like the duck, right? It's the duck paddling, right? On top, it looks perfectly fine. Underneath, it's just going like crazy. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying that that's sometimes the case. Some people can make it look easy as well. Oh dear. So in this world, this wouldn't be tenant user created. This would be tenant user, and there'd be an event saying, "Hey, here's why it was created." Right. So the event would kind of be a little different, but that's an integration event, right? That's not a yeah, that would work. So if I'm publishing the object in the integration event, but I'm also publishing why I published this thing, right? Then, okay, that's getting back to where I was going before. we kind of um, uh, um, all over the place today. The concept that an event can only be published from a single place is a problem, right? This is not the only one that can do tenant user created, right? No, okay, I apologize. My brain is running away with me right now because I am actually like thinking through this at a million miles an hour. So, tenant user created can only be published from one place because it is an event that is triggered by one thing. But if this changes to be tenant, and this is kind of event equals tenant user was created, say, then that changes that concept because anywhere can publish a tenant. It just has to explain why it's publishing the tenant, right? So it changes the design and changes the structure of other things because other events might trigger the tenant to be published. And yes, I could, in theory, publish the tenant 3 times from different areas with different events, but that's where timestamps matter. That's where idempotency matters. That means my consuming system is kind of more like event of tenant, right? Kind of something like that. And I think from a structure standpoint that doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. But I think again, it's the multiple producer concept, right? It's the thing I was missing. Someone put an acronym in a stream the other day, and it's like, huh? Does creative have the same fields? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Deleted is a little different. Deleted is the absence of data, right? If something gets deleted, there's nothing. Yeah, Rambling Geek knows that he needs tests. Yes, the age-old problem of do I spend time trying to make it better, or do I get the product out? Yeah, the made-up TDD solution for you. So going that, I mean, I am on a complete diversion today, but it is all down to the changes, right? I am talking about breaking things to change some of these things. So this is kind of why I wanted to discuss this now, because talking about this now and talking about this now does let me open my mind up a little bit more to what changes I need to make, right? Because there's two levels. There is the changes that happen within here, right? So, again, within the application, there's validation rules and there's also things that change. So if we did like an event source ticket, right? And maybe that's worthwhile going through just to experiment and learn, right? Maybe not now, but if we did an event source ticket, let's say I used event source and the ticket was Suigi, then the events that happen within here are events that happen within here. They doesn't matter to the greater system that the status the overall system does care eventually, but the status being changed is a thing that I can consume. I can listen to that event and then turn around and publish the ticket, right? Suiji's another dev in Ted's learning group or whatever. Okay. He's like me, except he works more on TDD and actually learns the material. I wouldn't say you don't learn the material. Don't know nullables at all, for example. Sorry, I'm thinking through what it would mean to change some of this stuff now. So if an event look, and I think it actually would look more like the it would have to look more like that from a structuring perspective. Purely because would it? Right. And regular software development. So again, the developer that's working on software, right? And like I said the other day, right? I don't so much believe that the developers should be the architects of their own systems at this point, right? I don't think that that's necessarily healthy. I think there should be people who do get this stuff and know how to build this stuff and implement it, that do run ahead and do this sort of thing, right? I have the benefit of this not being a full, like, demanded product right this second. I might get to learn some things, which I wouldn't get to necessarily do correctly in a business world, right? But this stuff happens, right? People are expected to write code. Yeah. So these things come along, and this opportunity to change things is just one I have that some developers don't get. So some developers, and this is how systems get messy, right? Because they don't say, hey, we need to make this change. Right. Now, the way that this system's built so far, it supports me making that change relatively quickly. You know, we've been able to change out Couchbase in 2 hours for SQL Server. We've been able to change out fast endpoints in 2 hours for, change out our Dallas endpoints for fast endpoints in a matter of hours. I spent 15 minutes more on the other endpoints yesterday, right? It wasn't that amount of time, and those are entire pieces of technology that got switched out. The pieces I've put in the code so far do support change, right? Again, putting these together, right? These rules and stuff, they sit together. If I need to change them, I can change them. If I need to pull out things I can do, and I should do it without fear. That's what really matters in a code base. Dumping code in and just throwing it out. Our architect, although his role name is different, general philosophy is quality over speed. 100%. 100%. And again, in a business application, right? In a business application, it is better that you can read the code than that the code performs half a millisecond faster, right? You are not going, unless you are doing massive transactions, you are not going to push the limits of the software. You do it right, that's faster in terms of, right, but that's sometimes an argument. It's kind of where I was going. I understood what you meant, yeah, but people would say, well, hold on, all this stuff, all this fluff around the outside is going to just make the application slower, and we need it to be quick, right? But it's not. It's not. .NET, the way it is, it will run on a Raspberry Pi. It will meet, like I could deploy this site, and I kind of mentioned it to Rambling Geek in terms of Pies yesterday, right? I could run this application on a Raspberry Pi and still serve several hundred people. I would have no doubt about, right? Delivery dates for the future, I mean, right? But it all comes around, right? If I write better code now, even if it's wrong code, it can be changed quickly. If I structure it in such a way, it might not meet everyone's demand, and that's always been my approach, right? I don't want to just go spending vast amounts of time looking at what other people do. I want to write software. And that is the greatest thing that can be, you know, some people develop code and are like, oh, I need to do this. Oh, we need this person. This person wrote this code. The system can't survive without this person. Don't ever be that person. Don't ever be the person the system can't survive without, right? I write code with the goal that you could fire me tomorrow and not miss me, right? My previous employer, okay, I had a team, but that team was able to run with that software, right? And I wasn't called back. Maybe they want more functionality, but there's an ongoing sustaining work. Yeah, that's natural. I mean, things change, but yeah. Oh no, not me right now. I'm aiming to get that fixed. Yeah, do. Don't be the person, because what it means is, if you are that person, you can't take a holiday. You have to have that phone locked to you. Right? I turn notifications off the moment I go out on PTO, and I do not check work. I think you should have an outbox table and after your add async method here, you should create your event and add it to your outbox table. This way you'll ensure integrity. Publishing the message direct to Kafka without saving to the database may cause message loss. Yeah, the outbox. The outbox. I did implement a simple one, didn't I? I need to put this in. The Kafka extensions. Yeah, I did implement a simple outbox. So that would be where that goes. So it wouldn't matter how I do it. Again, the iEvent publisher. Well, however you store. So the outbox is a buffer, right? The outbox is kind of adding resilience, because if Kafka is not available, your application shouldn't fail, is the concept, right? So the outbox is literally a message outbox. The message from Kafka goes into the outbox. So whether you implement it in SQL Server or whatever you implement it in, it goes into the outbox, it's stored, it's safe, and when Kafka comes back up, your application will resume sending. Good day, Thorolf. How you doing? Yeah, so I need to consume my own library in here and then implement um, a SQL version of the outbox. But the Kafka extensions library I created does now have that. I just haven't pulled it into this one yet. No, it's a solid pattern. Late breakfast. Aren't you in Europe? That's a very late breakfast. um, I think they call that dinner. Breakfast for dinner. No judgment. Oh yeah. Ah, okay. Well, that's practical breakfast then. How does Kafka know an event was consumed? Feels like it's a suggestion it's duplicating logic. Had a banana and a cup of coffee. I had a cup of tea and a a rice cake, chocolate rice cake, one rice cake. So far, I'm gonna have that for breakfast after the stream. There you go, a reward. PG tips, unfortunately. Can't afford to import that Yorkshire Gold. Too expensive to have Yorkshire Gold all the time. Yeah, PG tips cost like $9 for 50 bags. Yeah, but importing it into they do sell it in my local supermarket, but yeah. But anyway, outbox. So the outbox is a solid pattern because what it means is if Kafka is unavailable, your application remains stable and your messages are stored. So it's a buffer, right? Um, yeah. So your outbox is just a buffer between the two. So Kafka doesn't really necessarily care. It's just when Kafka comes back up, your application will say, "Hey, Kafka's available now. Let's start sending." Right. So the code that you write. So I think again, if you take a look at this, what I did is I made it so that this basically swaps out for my iEvent publisher. So I just say, hey, use the outbox instead of the Kafka publisher, and everything I've got that is publishing will just um, 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 tickets. No, it's in here, right? Application, um, tenants, subscribers. So this code would look no different because the outbox would be configured in the application setup. So yeah. So how I implement that is not really, and that's the kind of the purpose of creating that extensions library, is so that I have a generic layer. Yeah, it's an event publisher concern. Yeah. So this implementation just swaps out iEvent publisher for a buffer, and this one uses in memory just to demonstrate, right? So what I have to do is create like a SQL Server version or a Couchbase version of that, or something, right? But then I'll be able to just swap out the implementation. So the sample code here, outbox, right? So all we do is say, okay, add an outbox, configure, use the in-memory outbox with the default publisher, right? So it uses iEvent publisher underneath anyway, and then uses the in-memory outbox. So, but it means that if Kafka is not available, so if I turn Kafka off, the application, as long as the application is still running, this will still send the event once Kafka's up and running, right? Because the outbox service here is added, and this just says, hey, keep trying, and then go to right now a 10-second retry. So once it hits that, it will go back to 10 seconds, right? And then if it manages to hit this, it will reset it back to the low one, right? But yeah, that's the goal of that, the outbox. So that is that I implemented because I know that that's going to be necessary. So yeah, S is completely correct in that respect. But as far as changes go to the system, what do I want to do versus what do I need to do? What I want to do is actually rethink the publishing of the events, right? Because I still think that publishing the events will come from multiple areas, right? I think that a tenant could get updated from multiple areas, and more specifically, the tenant user or bigger objects, right? Tickets definitely when we get to publishing tickets to the larger system, because I don't feel that work items is the end of this piece, right? I think work items is the beginning. Work items is a generic term to cover things that are being worked upon, but I think this becomes tickets and it's solely focused on ticketing. When it comes to stories would be its own component, right? So a ticket being promoted would be an event, and that might be how I do my promotion and keep the lineage. Maybe we'll see, because I haven't thought through that part yet, right? Because I want to keep the ticket will always exist essentially, and then the story would be the ticket and additional information attached to the story. So there's a few ways of going at that one. But either way, I think that right now I do not have the greatest system to test this out on. I think this is a little bit weak still. And does need a little bit more work to get there. So, because I don't have greater system events that I need to know about right now. I don't have anything. I think I need to, now I've got the concept of setting the status in there, right? I think understanding what comes next is probably important. So I can add a ticket, I can set the status of the ticket. So it's essentially I could move the ticket, right? The API would support it. The events we'll worry about later, because I think this is nice. But I don't think that's necessarily easy to achieve given the again, implementation code versus actual desire, right? I think this does end up looking something like that, right? Where there is a event wrapper that takes an event name and an object and then serializes that out that way. So I think that does look like that. But this will always be the full object. This will never be what changed, it'll just be why it changed. And I think that meets my need there. Type and content. Yeah. Event or data. But for me, that makes sense. That works because it's still always tenant users. It doesn't matter what event triggered it. So however I end up doing that's gonna be the path I head down in some way, shape, or form. Because from an integration event perspective, that works perfectly. So validation we punted on. Essentially, right? Validation works for right now. We can copy it, we can build that up and work that in. Eventing, I don't have a need for eventing right now. So the next steps here would be I was going to meet and talk with my friend over this because I don't want to jump to UI. UI is a danger right this second, especially now. So I think the next step would be consider what archived looks like. Right, what does it mean to move it out of the board? Right, because closed is closed, but is there a rule for when it should be visible as closed, or like from a listing perspective, what should that look like? Because if closed ticket is just closed, then your board would look right. If I don't have the ability to say, yeah, this work's done, right, then it's so. Is there an extra label? Is there an extra flag or an extra status that is now archived? What does that like completed versus done, right? Because I think I need to figure out this, right, this process. So we have a backlog, right? So that's our pending. We drag it into open, we drag it into in progress, we drag it into done, right? Now what moves it from done? So I think that would be the next step there. And then from there we can talk about promotion to the next phase, which the next phase would be the concept of a and this is kind of the name I don't have right this second. The concept of a piece of work that is in planning, right? It's not story yet. I want to differentiate this, right? So if PMs are going to work on a story, they're getting the data together, they're getting information ready, right? There's a phase, and right now the way we do it in my day job is we kind of have the labels, right? So you have a status label on Jira, and it's kind of like in planning, ready for dev, right? But it can be marked as ready for dev based upon the fact that we've discussed it, right? But we haven't pointed it, etc. So I think an interim phase is, and a ticket can be promoted into it. Maybe we worry about promotion later once we've figured out the specifics of what this thing is. But this piece would be a kind of a kind of a work item. It would be an in progress story or in development story that has, you know, details attached to it. It can have images attached to it. It can have all sorts of stuff attached. Notes the same way. But it cannot be pointed, right? So the evolution of the data. So again, I'm trying to explore this as I go a little bit because I think that's a good way of doing what I'm trying to do, right? Being willing to change it, being willing to update it. So maybe that's the next phase for that. Maybe I just need to get those items planned. So archiving of tickets, what does that look like? Is it a time-based thing? Is it a rule-based thing? I'm not sure. I'll have to think through that. Because there's no window for tickets, right? Tickets have that status. There's no board. The board is active for the team. Maybe I can template teams and users so that I can have tickets assigned to different teams. That would probably be really helpful. But we're now getting into the world of there's a whole lot of things to do. And I've kind of got a plan enough that I'm comfortable with that. So changes, breaking. Once we get to that point, eventing and stuff is going to start to make more sense, and I can make some of these wide sweeping changes. So until I get to that point, right, until I get through those pieces, then there's not much. Well, there's a lot of development I could do, but I don't want to start anything today. But I do want to go over some things I want to do in terms of the stream, which is useful to talk about. So over the last couple of days, I have been spending a significant amount of time working in some extra features into the Twitch bot. Packages with vulnerabilities detected. That's very nice. Which ones? So this is all relevant to the stream and hopefully a lot of fun. So what I want to do is help make the stream a little bit more interactive, make the stream a little bit more fun at times, but also reward people who are subscribing, give some benefits to that, perceived benefits. Also, you know, this is kind of the software development process is not always one that's fun to watch. It's not always fun, especially if I'm stuck on something, etc. You know, you might be going coding your own stuff and listening to me in that respect, and that's fine. But for those that want to interact, I want to make sure there's at least some cool stuff or some stuff that might be that might be relevant to the stream. So what I've been doing is in the aim of doing that over the last couple of days, and I've implemented a webhooks piece inside of my libraries for the Twitch bot. This is all on the GitHub repo, by the way. This is not closed source. This is all open. And I've implemented every single webhook event in the Twitch API, bar one. So Twitch has got an API, documentation for working with webhooks. So what you do is you subscribe to a webhook using this endpoint. You say, hey, I want to subscribe on this endpoint. Here's the endpoint you're going to send it back to, and here's the things I want to subscribe to. So for every event you want to deal with, you basically say, here's what I want to subscribe to. Right. So this type is that. And Twitch will then sign you up to receive those webhooks. So what I've done is I've created a system that will allow me to, actually I'll show you here, webhook testing. Basically say, in a web app, add webhooks, secret provider, we'll go into that in a second, and then add local event handling, right? So dealing with this, right? I've got some ideas on how to do this. And then app.use webhooks. And what that does, and you can override that. So you can actually say, okay, I actually want it to go to /API/my webhooks, right? And it will hook that URL up. By default, it goes to /API/event sub. And that would be it. That's all you need to do to get it to work, right? With obviously some Twitch configuration. And then I've tested every single handler. Obviously, I'm not going to use a lot of these. I'm not going to be able to use a lot of these, right? But you can get a lot of things. And Twitch is actually moving towards using this method, I believe, for chat. So they're moving away from IRC and moving towards more webhook events for chat, which feels messy, but yeah. So I've spent more time than I would have liked building this up, and basically implementing a new event is literally going in here, giving the webhook event, because this is what Twitch provides, defining the data, and then going creating a handler, right? So, you know, for chat notification, right? I think this is actually what their chat's going to be, right? It has a message. A message has fragments and text. Fragments are pieces of data which have cheer modes. So the structure is complicated, to say the least. But I've created all the classes around this. Why am I going over this? What I want to do is I want to implement some overlays, and I want to implement some features into the chat that allow viewers to be able to add tickets, essentially, and kind of make that more interactive, or more precisely, view tickets. So as I build the system, build the application stack, what I'm going to actually do is take a little bit of time to make a public version of the ticketing system, right? And that will have the ability to interact. So I can add a ticket into my system, but you can add a ticket as a viewer and as a subscriber more, right? You'll be able to add tickets or view tickets, etc., into the actual system to make that piece a little bit more interactive, to make this actually theme around this product. Might be a goofy idea, you know, and I'm not going to spend a significant amount of time trying to make that work. And obviously, I need to get the application stack into a place where it actually supports that first. Maybe that's a branch of the code. Maybe that's a separate build that does the specific Twitch stream pieces. But it would allow me to test it. It would allow me to do, hey, I want to make a board public, that sort of concept, and then interactive. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with this piece. But I did implement the entirety of the webhooks bar one thing, right? Twitch has a pattern, right? The pattern looks like, let me find webhook base of it. No, not that one. Webhook event handler. I've got to rename some things. Let me go here. So Twitch incoming subscription message, right? So Twitch has a pattern, and it is every message has a subscription data and an event, and then has headers attached to it, right? So this pulls the headers, right? So I pull the headers out of the event, and that gives me who the subscriber is, or which channel ultimately, and the secret for this message, which I have to match upon, right? So I have a secret provider for each message, so I can actually hold. Right now it's a dumb provider, but I register the secret provider as a function, and it says, "Hey, go for this header. Go get me the actual secret." And what that means is that per message type, I could have a separate per subscription. I could actually have a separate secret, right? And different channels, etc. But then so every message comes with a subscription, an event, and headers. Except one message out of the entire API. And that is in not channel drop. A drop entitlement. This message has many events, and its subscription has different data to it. So every event across the entire Twitch thing has just the broadcaster that it's intended for in the subscription data and the secret and everything like that, and then it has the event data, which is the actual data it needs, and every single one across the entire of the webhooks worked until I hit the very last one, which is this one, drop entitlement grant. And this is someone actually doing drops, right? But you can have multiple events come in for the event, so this one doesn't fit the rest of the schema. I'm like, so that one doesn't work. But being that I'm a dev streamer, I don't have to panic about that right now because drops are not something we get to do, right? And not partnered either, so that would be a long way away. But if you are looking for creating a Twitch bot and you do want something that has implemented every single webhook in there, feel free. It is there. Right now it's open in a branch of the Twitch bot code. And it should be just as simple as configuring a site, doing this. So the way this works, by the way, is it has some code in there to dispatch, and this has an event publisher inside of it. So when it gets it, it translates it into the object and then publishes that event. And this is configurable so that I can extend this and say, hey, actually distribute the events, etc. Because what I want to do is put kind of channels in and build overlays off this. So right now, that's what it looks like. So it receives a published event of add, and this object then has all that data. And you can test this using that CLI tool, which I'm safe. You can install the CLI tool, and I can test. Right, stream offline, channel shout out received a shout out, that sort of thing. again, like, there's things in the stream that I do want to improve. I want to make better for those people watching, those people that are subscribing, which I really do appreciate the subscriptions. That does at least allow me to put something back into the stream, so I can spend some money on equipment when necessary, etc. I can put that away as a fund, right? That's really helpful. So I want to put things back into the stream, and I'm open to ideas as well. Things like subscriber only channels in the Discord. Things like I want to do. Maybe we can have some calls or meetups, etc. Essentially online, and go through projects and ideas and use them as kind of a useful thing for people who are subscribing. I don't want to make it just a, hey, thank you for subbing. There's absolutely no benefit to doing it other than you don't get to see ads, right? So in terms of changes to the stream, these are things that I'm looking at. I'm not going to spend significant amounts of time on, because I think that the most of you are here and interacting either care about the discussion or care about the software development piece, and I'm trying to grow and learn, and I want to continue that. So yeah. But anyway, that is the Twitch bot stuff that I've been working on alongside everything else. That's taken a long time to do, but it is working. That's all functioning, and again, that is available. So, changes. Let's hold on. Let's make sure these are captured. Oh, can't change that one yet. Added validator for update to ensure we can't change review date correctly. Best not lose this. This is worthwhile. That goes into there. Moved validator for add ticket into readability. Configure add and update validators tickets push. So yeah, I mean, is there any opinions on the stream changes I want to make? Any thoughts? Everyone went quiet. Always makes you nervous. Absolutely no discussion after the fact. Right. Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah, I've been running through a few things because I've really enjoyed the last couple of months of development. I've enjoyed the interactions that we've had, and getting into streaming again was something I wanted to do, but was scared to do again. If I'm honest, it was not easy to hit that go live button, and I'm really glad I did. But I found a good time that works, right? This 719 window, although short, is it works for me in terms of engagement, in terms of the people that are watching. Hey, Augustine. How you doing? I've had a very quiet YouTube chat today. So thank you very much for subscribing. Appreciate the YouTube subscribe. My YouTube videos have been getting more and more views, which has been nice. Nice. So in terms of rules, I think the next one to figure out is actually, so let's do this. So that's done. That one I'm going to move out, right? And I'm going to start a new sprint. Sprint goal. Sprint goal of this one will be to figure out what comes next. Planning to do coding challenge soon as well. You like the coding challenge, so I have. Yeah, I mean, another coding challenge will be fun. I've got to balance out when. The biggest problem for the coding challenge is 2 hours was nowhere near plenty to even do it, right? So if I do a coding challenge on stream, part of the energy there is keeping it going and diving into the specifics, and that was why it was fun. But I don't always have a 4 hour window to do it in, right? And I can't go booking time off work, unfortunately, to do streaming stuff. So I did enjoy that coding challenge. I would recommend those things to anybody for certain. And like I said, right now I think I've put it behind. I think I started it. I put it behind a channel points redemption on Twitch that people can contribute to if they actually are interested in doing that again for right now. Because again, I want it to be the stream. My focus is on this platform, right? Because this is my way of keeping in touch with my development as well, right? It's not just about the streaming. It's not just about sharing and the discussion. For me, this is also my way of keeping in touch with .NET. So I give you a proper little, but part of the fun is, and I think part of the challenge there was I wasn't prepared. So I was looking at it blank, and you got to see how I tackle from the moment you get presented to how to develop it straight away, right? So I think as a demonstration, it worked pretty well, right? You saw the struggles, you saw the, I'm not sure how to do that. You saw the, I figured it out. You got all of that in that time, right? So to do that in 2 hours wouldn't be right, and then to do it across multiple streams loses context. So I'm not doing it again. I will do another coding challenge for certain, and it won't be too long before it happens again, because again, that worked as a palate cleanser, right? But I've just got to make sure that I do it on the right terms. I know that I do have at least a day off in January. Maybe I can plan around that. As part of my job, I do get at least one day off every month. So maybe those align, because I can do longer streams potentially on those days. Or, unfortunately, I have to do it later in the day, right? Sprint name. Sprint name will be Gouda. I don't know. Sprint name. Sprint name will be. What do I want to put? What do I want to label these things? What is the interim between a ticket and a story? A planning item? Let's go with planning items for now. Figure out what happens to a ticket when it's closed. What does it mean to plan? These and more questions. Maybe answers. Okay, we're going to start that. Okay, so Monday is New Year's Day. That will be a quiet stream, I would imagine, if I do stream. But let's say I'm going to do it. We're going to start on Monday and we're going to finish on the Friday. Okay, so that's the way that works. So planning items is the current sprint. Well, I guess I'm going to find out what happens. Do you just remove the status? Does everything just live in done forever? That seems kind of inefficient. We are from which country? From and in are two different things, right? I am from the UK. I am in the US. I am American. I am naturalized citizen. But I am from the UK originally. So as always, if anyone has questions, any thoughts or opinions on what I'm doing, feel free. It's okay. We can talk. Okay, so we have a goal. Okay, so that's an interesting design. I'm not sure I'm gonna enjoy that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have to come up with some items, and they're gonna kind of be focused around the planning items concept. And I think at this point, the safest bet from a design perspective is that planning items becomes their own application component, right? So planning items would have their own database. They would have, because I'm kind of holding to that. These are not microservices. These are not microservices. And modular monolith, maybe. But for me, this is about keeping the components of the code that are like together until I see a pattern appear, right? It might be that, so this gets renamed tickets. Because initially, tickets, planning items, stories all lived in this in my head. And now I'm not so sure because I don't think it's right just to say that I can promote, right? Because at the very end of this, right, there'll be some stories around I need to promote a ticket to a planning item, right? A ticket could also be promoted to a story later, but we're not even at stories right now. So a ticket can be promoted to a planning item. Why might it be promoted? Well, the ticket can't be, it's not a fix. A ticket suggests that there's an actual solution within a finite amount of time, right? So if a customer reports, hey, my printer's not working, then that's a ticket that can be picked up, worked on, and completed in a very short amount of time overall. If the customer reports, hey, this isn't working correctly and it's breaking this data, it might go in as a ticket because it needs investigation, and they find out, oh, actually there's some code that is not doing what it should do, right? Some companies would fix that in the space of that ticket, but the reality is what should happen is it should get moved to become development work. Even if the same people are working on it as developers and support, it should still be moved appropriately. So it might get promoted into a work item, a planning item. Gotta get my terminology right here. This is going to be important, right? Once it gets promoted to a planning item, then it still has the same stages, right? It goes into a planning item in progress or open in progress, done, right? Done for a planning item. That's going to be another challenge, right? What does, how long do they stay there? But then from a planning item, it can either be completed and identified that actually there's no problem and we don't need to do anything, or it could be put into the development backlog. So from a coding structure perspective, yeah, I think that planning items becomes its own thing here. And work begins on that on Monday. So I've got today and tomorrow's stream to figure that part out, right? So, what else? What else? What else? What else? What else? Yeah, in terms of the coding challenges, by the way, Sarav, I would be interested if anybody else picks up those coding challenges. The stream is on the YouTube channel. I would be interested to see if anybody else picks them up and the solutions they come up with or the challenges they have, right? So when we're doing those sorts of things, it'd be really cool to see if people actually are doing them as well. The challenges, the questions they have, and jump in the Discord and feel free to talk about that stuff because it's all about growth and learning, right? It's all about making sure that we are. Again, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? I'm not doing this because I want to get rich or I want to be well known as a .NET developer, right? I'm doing this because I enjoy what I do. I like sharing with other developers, and I like to learn and grow. So yeah, I'll make sure the Discord link is in the YouTube. It is in the panels below on Twitch. So yeah, I think thinking that for right this second, there's not much else for me to do, so we might actually finish a few minutes early here. Hopefully this has been useful in some respects. I know there's been a lot of talking, but that's the nature of planning software, right? Of building software. You shouldn't just run in and do what you're asked to do, right? Stop, think, make sure that it's the right thing to do, because oftentimes you could spend a significant amount of time trying to implement something that you didn't need to do. So it's always worth stopping and thinking. Think patterns will evolve here, right? Things will change, and I'm not unwilling to grow, right? I want to grow. I want to get better. I want to build better software. Maybe this isn't perfect. Maybe this style isn't perfect. Maybe this design isn't perfect. Maybe there's things in here that I need to address differently. But I can change them, and I should change them. I need to make sure that I have more tests around this code, right? There's a lot of things in here that aren't covered by tests right now, right? So if I maybe we start to run code coverage, which is a scary, scary point. Let's have a look. Cover all tests. Let's see. Cover. Okay, so we have tests running. 85 tests is not insignificant. This I'll have to start doing though, right? This is something I don't do day to day, and I should do, right? Continuous testing is scary because you could break something, but the point is it captures you, right? It catches you breaking things, right? But that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for code coverage tools. What's cover versus Let's have a look. Do I have to use dot cover? Oh, okay, it is in that. Okay. So settings. No. No. Plugins. Yeah, it's already in there. So where is it? Open the plugins page. Right. Control S. Installed. Right. Dot cover plugins bundled. Okay. So, oh, there we go. There we go. It's right up there anyway. How often I use it. So, yeah, we've got some pretty weak coverage right this second. So our work items code is, our data is 67% covered. Our application is only 43% covered. Notes are fully. Let's open this up properly. Right, so here's the challenge, right? I'm throwing off my own metrics by putting things in to here, right? So it looks like, so this just comes down to, okay, what does it mean to have code coverage? What does it mean to have effect? So what this is saying is the command and handler are 100% covered, right? There is 0 uncovered lines of code in these pieces, right, that the test doesn't touch on. Update support ticket, the handler, right, is 74% covered. So, yeah, we've got some work to do. But do I set myself a goal, right? This is without setting a goal, right? So it is disingenuous to say that the application as a whole has 42% coverage. It does not. Is it right to say the application has 55% coverage? There's stuff that shouldn't be covered. Maybe. Do I cover the validators? Do I write tests around the validators? Is that a useful use of my time to make sure the validators do what the validators should do? I'm trusting another library. I'm testing another library. I suppose that's an opinion. But if I was told, hey, you need to have at least 80% coverage right now, this is X unit that I'm using now. Yeah. And I'm getting these tools because they're covered. They're part of Rider. So yeah, I mean, that does put into question the organization of my code. Should, this is one for an opinion, this is not one for me to solve. I'm not going to answer this necessarily. I know what I feel versus what it's doing, but nice. That's what covered us. Okay, that's nice. So that's showing me which tests actually cover this piece of code. Okay. JetBrains, sponsor me. I'll happily sell your products. How much should In my opinion, we should create a unit of work implementation in the repository instead of save changes async. And here we should create a save changes async method and call the DB context save changes async method after saving the integration events to the outbox. Because in current use, if you want to use more than one repository in your command handlers in the future, you must use transaction. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. More than one repository in the command handlers. Again, we're going to, if we're doing single responsibility, how many repositories should I have in a command handler, right? If we're dealing with them at granular state, right? Is it a design smell if I have 2 or 3 repositories inside of a single command handler? The specification should allow me to pull associated data using includes. So if the command handler is small enough, and that's kind of why I introduced workflows, right? So workflow, wrapping a transaction around workflow would work. Transactions get messy very quickly, right? And actually, it's a good point. It actually is a very good point, because watch, we actually can test this. We'll get into it more, but here. So you're advised not to send extra commands from within a handler, right? That's general advice for good use of the pattern, right? So a mediator command should be sent to a handler. That handler should never publish another command. Junicus, hello, how are you? It's been a long time. How's things going? Very long time. Doing good. Nice. Nice. How's your platform going? Things are good. Good to hear. The downside to having YouTube and Twitch at the same time, if I'm reading out YouTube messages, they don't show on screen. Twitch messages show on screen for YouTube viewers, but they don't show on screen for, and I'm not allowed to merge them. Work is good. Good. Glad to hear it. Awesome. Life is great. That's all you can ask. That is good to hear, though. I've recently got back into my streaming schedules, finding a streaming schedule, and have found my energy, and found the thing that I'm going to do, which is giving me a lot more focus, which is good. And also moving to a job that does PHP has really, really motivated me to stay on my .NET stuff. So yeah, to the point of the transaction stuff, right? So because you shouldn't rather send a command from within a command handler, right? I created the workflow, right? So the workflow is my get around of, hey, I need to send multiple commands. But this is exactly where your transaction stuff would definitely be necessary, because this joins those things together, right? It's an explicit piece that says, hey, send this command, send this command, send this command. This would be perfect for transactional pieces, because this isn't distributed, so it's not like this is going out to this thing, right? And again, if we switch out for the outbox, then this would wrap up in that as well. Amal, good morning. Hello. Yeah, I noticed I've stopped watching a lot of streams, but I noticed you are working on a ticketing system and going deep, it seems. Yes, the goal here is very much to build something for real, right? I am trying not to get bogged down with concepts, more actual practical application, and focusing on making progress bit by bit. We should not publish in the code here either. Well, these are mediator notifications. But again, this moves inside of this, right? So this workflow is really register a new tenant, register the tenant user, right? We must add a list of events and call them from a single point within the unit of work. Depends on what that unit of work's doing, right? Unit of work comes with some challenges depending on what it's actually going to do. If it's really transactional wrapping, so I've done this before where I've deferred eventing till later and becomes challenging. So these are notifications within the application. These are more like domain events, right? Oh no, I gotta stop trying to even use that word. But they are internal events. The publisher, the event publisher, listens to these and publishes its thing. So yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there. So question, unit of work, right? So obviously most people get onto the unit of work. We should not publish everywhere. These are my humble opinions. I appreciate you giving me opinions. This is why I do this, right? I want to talk about this stuff because again, my assumptions about how the software will work and should work are not necessarily always correct. So, no, I really appreciate the thoughts. What I'm trying to do is think about what would I put in place there. So yes, you get into a world of change data, right? So essentially, this publish, should not fire until that commits. Because that's truth then, right? This is not truth if this doesn't commit. So if I put this in a unit of work, right? Let's say we wrap this in a transaction. And I've got to finish up, I do apologize. But if we wrap that in a transaction, then if this happens, right, in the transaction but doesn't fire, we then publish this event, which then publishes a notification, which actually publishes a Kafka event, right? Then we go to commit and it fails and rolls back this record change. This still happened. We can't undo that. So it's not even we have to wait until the unit of work completes. It's not like here we say, go publish, right? Hey, you were talking about code coverage before, and there is an option to limit things that should be covered in Rider. You can create filters so assemblies, classes, methods are not analyzed by. Nice. Thank you. Yeah. The point is that, so the design I'm kind of landing on recently has meant that I have this class is not really a class, it's just kind of a wrapper. And then I have command, handler, and validator so that I can stop these being so wordy. But the code coverage obviously picks up the validator and says, oh, this is not validated, this is not covered. So yeah. So yeah, we probably maybe I'll look into that. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. We should not write publish everywhere. These are my humble opinions. Yeah, so I agree. But it's kind of more change data controls than it is, or CDC. But I don't want to actually publish that event unless it's safe to the database. So I have got into this before. What I have done in the past is created some extensions to Entity Framework DB context that say, hey, I write something like this and say, when this happens, publish it, right? Can get a little difficult, but maybe that's what we should do. Hit the cog on top and you can set it up there later. Okay. Unit test, coverage pane. What's coverage versus unit test coverage? Hold on. Now I've got to see. No, that doesn't do anything. Okay. Figure out what that window does later, but yeah. Cog. Yeah. Filtering. Nice. Gotcha. Nice. I will definitely look at them because that will help in getting some more realistic coverage. Yeah. So anyway, coverage. That's going to be a thing we have to keep an eye on. Transaction wise, yeah, I do see the issue. And we actually have seen the output of this, right? Where it's failed to register the user with Auth0. What do we do, right? Because there's a piece missing there, right? So maybe there are some domain events. The thing is that is an IDE level config, so it's not stored in the project as far as I know. Going on consistent patterns, consistent design, then I should be okay there. So that should at least mean that I'm consistent. The coverage is closer, which is what I care about. And the point about the coverage was very much: should your code design and layout be broken because your coverage numbers are off, right? Like, most developers would not do what you just even suggested. They'd go, oh no, we've got to change it all, and change it. And then the code would look nastier because of that. Also check mark to exclude autocopies. Nice. These are the things that if I'm building the project out of a true size, these are things that will become more and more challenging, right? So, okay. But anyway, unfortunately, I do have to finish up. I have to figure out what I'm going to eat for breakfast. I have to get ready for work, and yeah. So I will actually consider as a identity provider. I'm actually going to put some more consideration and thought into this because it does pose a challenge even now, and kind of maybe propose some ideas. Maybe we have another library, right? Maybe we have an entity framework extensions library that allows us to say, hey, when this happens, change. Maybe we can hook into change data controls, right? Maybe because you can add. I think the Bezium has a CDC for SQL Server that publishes Kafka events. I don't want to lean into Kafka for this because this is kind of like a notification at the local level, and I think this matters more, right? I like this eventing because other things happen, right? It allows me to do that. So there is a few pieces here that are going to be ever more important, and I really appreciate you raising it, because it is a good time, right? I titled the stream "Breaking the Changes," so it is going to be something we do cover. So I'm going to finish up here. Thank you very much for joining me, Junicus. Fantastic to see you again. Hopefully, it is not long before we see you again. I will raid out because I think that's a good thing to do. Rambling Geek, thank you very much. I got what you're saying. It's fine. Good to have you hanging out here as well, Rambling Geek. We are going to go and raid. Who are we not raided yet? We're going to raid Foolbox. So Foolbox is building a puzzle game, right, in Godot using the GD script. I recommend downloading the demo or going to the demo site. It is a really addictive puzzle. So it's in kind of a satisfactory vein. We're going to raid over to Foolbox, so please say hi. My apologies for those on YouTube. You don't get to come along for the raid. I will be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. And yeah, thank you for joining me. See you all again soon. You're already raiding. What? I'm not. Oh, there we go. Apparently I already clicked it. Thank you all.